Well, welcome to Chapter 7, Diversity and in Society and School. Okay, let me just say off, this is the hardest chapter for me to teach about. I so adamantly disagree with these authors on so many points in here, and my goal will be to hide that from you. At times it's going to slip out, but I've learned the hard way that we don't really have academic freedom, and so therefore some of my opinions are contrary to the rest of education, so I will keep those to myself and do the best I can. They have some very good stuff in here, but they have some blatant things in here that I can't leave, so I'll have to point those out and let you decide for yourself. Many of you will agree with these authors, and that's great because these authors really represent education as it is today. And even though I disagree with them on so many points, their opinions, and that's what they express here over and over as their opinions, are very representative of the educational system today. Let's look at this first. The different learning outcomes here. Incorporating race and ethnicity in your classroom. Identify socioeconomic status. Different instructional strategies for English language learners. They do a pretty nice job on English language. Differences in sex and gender. Develop strategies supporting different sexual groups. Articulate the need to provide appropriate accommodations for SPED kids. Create strategies for incorporated diversity. And then diversity in the student population. So let's give it a go here. First, they start out talking about multicultural education, gender and race, and we're going to call this number 1. Let's see, I gotta get that here. This will be your number 1 as you'll address these 3 things from here. So this is a very interesting statement. Their opening statement of this chapter holds educators morally and ethically responsible. It's a really interesting comment here. Or to help all students regardless of their social economic status, ethnicity, race, religion, sexual orientation, or ability. So I hit them all, and I would agree that this term morally and ethically strikes me funny. So no doubt, and you know this better than I do, how diverse our schools are, more so every day. It says that teachers and administrators view everything, in that way, and it has to be through the multicultural lens. And that's, again, I'm not sure that's true, but that's their assertion here. You don't see anything that supports that. There's no research or documentation. That's their assertion that everything has to be through multicultural. Okay, so there's your things there. I'll let you read that. So let's move on then to race and ethnicity, and it very quickly points out the difference between these two groups, and that will be your here. I have them for you. Ethnic groups are based on national origin, okay, where they came from, one's family or ancestors, in which the members share a culture and sense of common destiny. And then a panthetic group, say that out loud, panthetic group is based on national origin from a continent such as Africa, Asia, or Europe. Okay, so ethnic and panthetic groups, and that is here. And what's interesting is now we have so many things, and you can pick your identity because if your mother is from one panthetic group and your father from another, you get to pick which one you would like to be, and then express that. Apparently, I'm not sure. I'm asserting that like these authors. I'm making a judgment there. Okay. And then this part goes into race, and this is what race has to do with physical characteristics. Our ideas about race are created from our own experiences and reflections in the media. Physical characteristics such as skin color is signifier, but does not fully capture the meaning of race. And being fearful to address race in your classroom will not serve you well. And again, I'm not sure where that comes from. I don't know. That's one of those things, like, I don't get why that's part of this. Like, why would you be fearful to address race, and why are you addressing your students of different race? They're all your students. I don't get that. I don't understand that. But that's where they're coming from. Okay, and then ethnicity is this, and you get this in ethnicity. Their national is a primary deterrent. Have a shared history and language and traditions and experiences. Cohesiveness is strengthened as members organize to support and advance the group. And again, I don't I don't get that. But let me give you this. Here's your first clip, and that is the size of the different groups. Okay. And you'll get this one to bring in right there. Okay, and what it is, it shows here, and this is the forgotten part still, but the biggest group are the white people, and you'll see all through all this, we never, these same things will apply to these groups, but this is not talked about. 12% identify themselves as black or African American, 5% is Asian, 2 or more Hispanic, and American Indian is very small here. And this one is because of people coming to our country in recent years, is why that number is escalated where it's at. And this is from 2015. So by far the biggest group is still white. And I'll talk about that as we go through this, when these different things. So you put that clip here. Let me better put that in here. This will be right here. And this will be number 3. And clip 7.1. Okay. And then immigration is unauthorized immigrants, and that's a nice political term for illegal. And you're going to have to read all of this because there's test questions that deal with a lot of this here. So immigration, unauthorized, hence illegal, in here, and you can read that. This is interesting here that you have to know. Unauthorized workers come here, have families. You may know students whose parents are arrested or deported. But here's what it comes down to. You, regardless of their immigration status, all children must be provided education. And this is this court case, Plyer versus Doe, declared a school district could not deny a public education to children whose parents were unauthorized. So get your arms around that. These kids will be in your class and schools, and we educate them, and that went through the courts. This is interesting also. This is the group that destroys so much of our stereotypes about immigrants, is the Asians. Chinese, Japanese, Filipinos first came to the United States in the 19th century to provide labor needed to the West Coast. And then, as it went on, it talks about a bunch of stuff here. These Chinese are the largest Asian ethnic group in this country. Chinese are 4.5 million, follows Asian Islanders, Filipinos, Vietnams, Koreans. 1 in 5 Asian students are foreign-born, the majority is Asian. So problem is they don't fit any of the stereotypes that we're going to talk about as far as socioeconomic status and low income. Rarely do we talk about the Asian folks because they blow that up. They don't follow any of the stereotypes. So even though they're new to our country and stuff, they're seldom mentioned in those groups. And so it'll be interesting to see. Finally, we have to admit this: Europeans from Northern and Western Europe comprise a major portion of immigrants in the United States in the 3 centuries after Columbus arrived. Okay. Schools are early recipients, and this pertains to you also. This is where it affects you. Is often this is the word that you addressed this early is students in school that are new to this country. And again, whether they're unauthorized or they're authorized, they come to school. And I saw some of this when I was teaching middle school as students. They'd be new to this country, whatever way they came, and children come to school. And language was one thing, but we got a bunch of kids from Africa that we couldn't really figure out how old they were. There was no birth certificate or anything like that with them, of course. But what was harder was to decide what level of learning they had. Hard to assess reading and math skills. And I saw them in 8th grade, and it was we never quite to do, because if you wanted to match up their skill set, you backed them way up, and that wasn't going to work. So you get that. And this is another assertion here that I don't know. This is 7.2. I'm not going to make you do this one, but this is the number of pre-K to 12 students are in the green, and then the nationality of the teacher. So obviously the biggest group is white. But what I don't quite get the assertion here is that the intent there is that these white teachers can't teach these other ethnic groups. I'm not quite sure where that's coming from, but that's the implication here. And we've spent lots of money trying to recruit teachers from other nationalities to teach in our schools, really to no avail, especially here in the plains, in the Midwest. When we find these folks are not really interested in settling in the Midwest if they're from the coast. So I don't know. This is an interesting assertion here. No research says this has to be. They're just simply reporting it. Okay, so schools are recipients. That's you. Are becoming more diverse. I don't know if they're becoming. They just are more diverse at a faster rate than the rest of the population, because when they arrive in this country by whatever means, they really can go somewhat unnoticed, except they come and bring their children to be in school, because they obviously know the value of education in our country and how good our schools are compared to some of the schools they attend. And so they come to our communities, and they come to your class and your school. There they are. So this racial and ethnic disparities in education, and talks about the achievement gap, differences in academic achievement among groups based on their race, ethnicity, social economic status, native languages, sex. And that to me, that's such a weird word to put in there. You would think in this day and age it'd be gender and exceptionalities. And then it kind of goes through this. And here's my take on it, and disagree if you like, but this is the leader. This circumvents all the others, because no matter when these groups or people arrive or attend, if they get education, they soon leave this socioeconomic barrier and become affluent or middle class, regardless of their language or their status or anything. And we don't talk about that a lot. And patterns of achievement of students of color is similar to low-income students. And part of that, again, I don't quite get the assertion here because often they are the same. And the students of color often are the generational ones that come from generations of low income. And then here, this will be your number 4, will be this definition. I'll show you where this is at right here, high poverty schools right here. So here's the achievement gap. Have that for you. And then high poverty schools in which 76 to 100% of the students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. And this is how this is always determined in schools. Okay, make a note of that. This is how low income is determined in schools, is how many apply for free or reduced lunch. And what's interesting, we now have districts in this country that no longer check this, that if you walk into school, I know the Cleveland School District announced this several years back, that they no longer would have any requirements for free lunch. Everybody that comes to their schools get free lunch because they spent so much time chasing this down, that who was and who wasn't. So that's the way they dealt with it. I don't know who pays for it. You'll figure that out. I mean, that's the thing. So high poverty schools there. So social economic status. Are you familiar with this term? It plays differently in the media, that term. First of all, this will be your number 5. As you'll bring this over here. What is social economic status? And it is the economic condition of individual based on their own or their family's income, occupation, and educational attainment. And it's so much more than that. To me, they've way oversimplified what this is. So it's a measure of identifying family standard of living. Family also has a great impact on its members' chance of attending college. And this is true. And it's not, the implication here is, if your social economic status isn't right, you don't have the ability to attend college. I adamantly disagree. Your desire to attend college also changes dramatically. Here's why. If your family qualifies as low social economic status, you are eligible for much, much more financial aid than my kids. And so one of the things we don't talk about in here, don't want to address, is their chance of attending college are less, not because of their economic status, but because of their desire. And that can be, or might hardly be, related to their SES, social economic status, but it's not entirely. Determined by one's occupation, income, and it's for the most part, the occupation, it's due to lack of instead of what your occupation is. And that affects your income and educational attainment. And this is an interesting statement here. Wealth and power are important factors that affect the way one is able to live. But besides these data are difficult to measure, we may be able to guess families' socioeconomic status if we know such things as where they live, their jobs, and the type of car they drive, the schools their children attend, and the types of vacations they take. So again, I'm not quite sure how that all fits in here, but the authors see that as an important part. And then we go here, let me come back to this. Standard of living, chance of attending college, and I'm saying to you, I don't think it's chances as much as desire. SES, and that's the acronym they assign, measured by occupation, income, education, and then possible indicators is neighborhood, job, schools, those types of things. And this you knew if you've worked in this at all. I said I spent 5 years teaching in a school that I spent 5 years teaching in a school that met this. that had 77% of the kids were free or reduced lunches. So I know about that. I live that. And I've had a chance to study a bunch of that since my time at DSU. Okay. And then we go to this social stratification and disability, and this will be our number 6 from the textbook. So there was your SES, and now here's your social stratification and disability, levels of social class ranking based on income, education, occupation, wealth, and power in society. And again, I'm not sure what this is about, but you can put there what you want on that, which different levels of structure. High or low rankings are not based solely on the SES criteria. Race, age, gender, religion, and disability can contribute to higher or lower rankings as well. And although members of most of the groups can be found at all levels, United States, those from Northern and Western Europe the most. So we have to admit this, that members from most groups can be found at all levels of income. And that's got to be a very hard thing, because we want to create a narrative that it's other groups other than the Europeans that have all the power and stuff, but they do have to back up a little bit. This is a very interesting also, social mobility. I'm going to give you that one. I want you to we're going to add that, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Mobility. Okay, and I'm going to add this here with number 6 is because it's important in this discussion. It remains one of the core values of the U.S. Agreed? What is social mobility? You look that up. And what is social mobility? We are told hard work will lead to better jobs, higher income, and a better chance of participating in good life. Read stories of individuals who were born in poverty and throughout hard work became wealthy as corporate presidents or whatever. Although upward mobility continues to occur, the chances of moving through poverty or to riches, no matter how hard one works, are low without interventions such as college education or lots of good luck. Interesting assertion there. Individuals who are born into wealthy families are much more likely than others to attain high-quality schools, finish school, high-paying jobs, and be wealthy. And they are raised with high expectations, have the economic resource to assist them, and it's fairly interesting. They write this as if that's a bad thing. Their assertion is that's a bad thing. Okay. So here is social stratification. It's a ranking. Has to do with these things. Okay. At the highest levels for poor. And again, like I say, they assert that this is a bad thing. Okay, so what about this social economic status class structure? And I'm going to let you you look at this. That comes out of here, and what they assert is this, that if you're from the working class, and they really make a derogatory statement about working class here that I think is unnecessary, divided distinct classes. Individuals who do manual work for a living are sometimes described as working class blue collars. When farm laborers are included, it's 37%. And can you put that in there, please? Right here. Now let me show you something after you put that in there. Have little control over their work. Some of the jobs are routine, mechanical. Okay, so again, the assertion here I think is interesting, as that's bad. It's routine, it's mechanical, not mentally challenging. Work is sometimes sporadic, affected by economy in which employees face layoffs, replacement by computers, equipment, part-time, unemployed. So it's a very derogatory here, and I'm not sure the value of that in this lesson. Okay, so here's the next group. Perceive themselves as poor, rich, identify themselves as middle class. So here we say this group, but if you don't consider yourself rich or poor, you consider yourself middle class, and those incomes fall in third or fourth quartile, would be about 40% populations, and their salaries range from here to here. So again, you will like here about 40%, and I think that is a very, very low estimate. Professional, managers, administrators, wide range in lifestyles along income continuum, usually attain professional or advanced degrees, meaning college. Families in this class have very different lifestyles on opposite ends. Like 100,000 in a neighborhood where most families earn 250 is low. Okay, and this isn't rocket science. And again, I'm not sure how it pertains to this lesson. In another neighborhood, make 100,000 would be considered well off. Okay, and you know that. The professionals, managers in this, more affluent middle class, they progress in their careers, becoming one of the 15% of the U.S. families earning 150 or more. And again, it feels like the assertion is, this is bad. This is a bad thing. Professionals are men and women who are usually obtain professional advanced degrees, and you know that. You're college students. You get what this is about. They include teachers, lawyers, physicians, college professors, scientists, all through this, with a median income of $66,000. And I will say to you, that's more than I make. I am below average in this field. And so far, we have been able to maintain and raise our family on a below median income. Then it goes on here, successful executives, business people, and managers and administrators in this group. Workers usually have more autonomy over the jobs and working conditions than they do in these lower middle class workers. And again, is that profound to you? No. You know that. Then again, here they use this term, the upper class, and their assertion again will be that it's a bad thing. Prominent families, limited interactions with other classes. Now, I'm not sure what that's based on. Children rarely attend public schools. Very interesting assertions here. But as you read this section, know that their assertion here is it's bad, are far higher than those of other classes in the gap. Protests such as Occupy Wall Street, I don't think anybody got that from that. They earn the top 1% of corporate. Yeah, the incomes of the corporate chief executive officer are growing dramatically, and then they give you some data about that. And again, their assertion is this is bad. 93, they earned 195 times as much. Here's the one, too. It was hard to leave this alone. The greatest assimilation of lifestyles and values probably occurs members of ethnic and culturally diverse groups in the upper class. So they don't know that. There's no documentation. They document a bunch of junk here in their thing, but they don't this. They make this assertion that to me invalidates their opinions here. Okay, so that's what you have here. It doesn't really give you a percentage. So where would you assume I'm adding 37 and 40? That's 77%. Certainly, the rest aren't here. So there's something wrong with their data here. I don't get where this fills in here. Then here they're talking about 15% that achieve this. up to here, but again, people worked hard. They didn't do these manual jobs, but they certainly did some things here. And again, this is where I'm disagreeing with these authors on this assertion they're making. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. It maybe is. I don't get how this plays, why this is part of this discussion. It doesn't affect your teaching or what you need to know about this, but they felt it important that you know that these people here are bad. Okay. And then this poverty part, and then we get another thing on this. Federal Poverty Guidelines 24,350, and you know, a family of four, and that you and I know that's not much. Families actually need about 1.5 to 3 times official poverty level to meet basic needs. 14 point of population earn below this. And children and many persons of color suffer disproportionately. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, let me go back to the textbook as it talks you through this. The thing that is left out of this discussion that I think is interesting is if you are in this era here, you now qualify for a very definite amount of government subsidies, like free lunch at school, and subsidy for your home and health care, and subsidy for college tuition. So there's a bunch of support that goes with this if you are in this poverty range. Now, do people want to live in here? No. But what happened is the part two we leave out of this discussion is generational poverty, where it becomes generation after generation after generation that fit here and fall into this category. But there is other support, like with food stamps and stuff, that all things that you can do to augment this that gets you up to this to support your family. But that is completely omitted from this discussion. Okay, and so that might be part of your thing for working in low-income communities, is you have to be aware of what these federal and state programs are to support these families, but it's unlikely, because for the most part they will know exactly what they're qualified for. And then it takes you through by race again, and again they go percentage. They don't go numbers, because if they went by the total numbers, it's still by far the most are white. Okay. Not going to make you take this one, but by far this is still the biggest group, because there's still the most people, but it doesn't fit the narrative here. Percentage-wise, this is one of the higher percentages, but it's a much smaller number of them because their population is much smaller. Same with this, as we looked before, like on our clip, that these percentages are small compared to white, but when you want to talk about poverty, you go by percentage here, so that you get that. Okay, so that was that. And then status and academic achievement, and this is hard to argue. They document well here, but these kids that come from these lower income homes have difficulty in school. And again, their assertion, they've oversimplified here what the issues are, but there is no doubt that kids from low-income homes have a harder time in school. Now, and here they hit right here, students whose parents have not finished high school do not perform as well on standardized tests as students whose parents have finished high school and college. Factors that generally correlate with higher incomes. Low-income students also do not perform as well on other tests given annually in the 4th, 8th, and 12th graders. And so they have a chart here that lays this out. And we're not quite sure what to do with this. We've known this for a long time, and we don't seem to solve that. Okay. So let me look at this with you. Do not finish high school, do not perform as well. Low-income students do not perform as well on standardized tests, and receiving a quality education is critical to low-income students. And nobody, here's a third time, nobody disagrees with that. What we can't agree on, and I'm going to challenge you as future teachers, is how to make this happen. How to make this happen. That how do we get these kids, this group here, a quality education? And it isn't always provided. It isn't received all the time. And so here your challenge going forward is our group of teachers, your new generation, a lot of you millennials, how do we help these families, these kids, receive this education and thrive? And then let's get into language, and this one is much more complicated because it has inference of other than generally language is a direct relation. They don't do a very good job of connecting this, but these folks are the newest to the country. And when you get to your school, this will be as big a challenge as anything. And here's what they're at. They interact with our ethnic and social background to socialize us, and miscommunication can occur when speaker and listener are different ethnic group. And again, I don't understand putting this in here because that's pretty obvious. Learned by imitation of adults and peers. Yes. So let's have a look at that. Children learn their native language and heritage language imitating adults. By age 5, they've learned the syntax in their language. When cultural similarities exist between speaker and listener, spoken messages are decoded accurately, but when they're not, okay. So I'm not sure what we're going to do here. So what is language diversity here? And it looks like this. You get these two here. Where are we at in number-wise? We are on number 8 here. So these two are number 8. What is the difference between an English language learner and an English as a second language learner? Here, more than 60 million residents speak a language other than English at home. Spanish is the most often spoken foreign language. And again, you get that so many of the newest people in this country came from Mexico, whether they're authorized or not authorized. That's the biggest group and the newest group, and they speak Spanish. And children learn their native language by imitating adults and peers, just as your children do. And then it's American Sign Language, and there's a part on that here. There's that. Here, this your classroom includes a student with hearing disabilities. They represent 0.2%. I think that seems high to me. American Sign Language, a question on the test about this. What is the official sign language? It's American Sign Language. And so you get that. And then there's some stuff on dialect diversity here by region. Each dialect has its own rules. Some schools allow students to use dialect other than standard English in the classroom. Lots of controversy over this. Lots of controversy. Should we have students speak Spanish? Some states have tried running their schools in just Spanish, and what they found, and we're not really allowed to talk about this, but when they made complete Spanish-speaking schools so they could teach the unauthorized and authorized new citizens, their achievement was no different than they were in the regular schools. Okay, so that's dialect, and we have a little dialect in this country. Wait for this. Like, have you ever noticed that people from the South in this country speak a little differently than we do here in the Plains? Their dialect, it's kind of the same if you're from the East Coast. Not quite as noticeable as it is from people from the South. But we also have a little dialect thing. Then language diversity, a bilingual education. His here uses English and native language of students in classroom. English as a second language here. English language learners. You've already dealt with this. So here, now this is what you get to do here. You get to address all of these now on number 9. What you can find out about these things. And give a couple lines about each of those. And there they are. And read through that. And this also goes with it. Okay. Dual language, 2 ways. And again, you'll want to read through all that because there's some questions on the test about it. Newcomers, they don't really... yeah, here's some of that stuff. Newcomers are designed to help immigrant students develop proficiency in both home and English, and that's great. That's what it should be. Parents should be involved, and that's often the parents from the newest ones want to be involved in that. And if you're in a school that has a high population of people with second language, get those parents involved. Okay. Then gender. Oh, here we're going to have this also. Should students be bilingual? All students be bilingual here, and that's an excellent discussion. Let's come down here. Let's come down here and drop it right here. And now you have this. Should all students be bilingual? And you get to decide that. And please don't respond to it until you've read Doug Ward's response and Suzanne Emery's. And then respond. And then we get into gender. Very interesting here, this talk of the difference between males and females. And that is not profound to either. Perform differently in academic subjects and behave differently in the classroom, are treated differently in society. Okay, and that they're asserting that, and we all would agree, I think. And then they want to make a case of pay inequity here, based on something, and I'm not sure what that has to do here. And then they go into this equity in education. Okay. And it looks like this. Stereotypes are sometimes reinforced. State of fairness adjusted across individuals and groups. Different instructional strategies may be needed for different groups. So that's interesting. You might even use different instruction. But then we go to Title IX, which has been around since... There's equity. 72. And 72... was for this equal educational opportunity, and they run a bunch of data, but ultimately what it came about is this: is that you have to offer the same sports. And then what's interesting is some of the schools really struggle to fill all their women's sports, because we go on to this long thing up here how different females and males are, and yet we have to have it the same in some way in sports, and created some problems there. But nonetheless, this has been around since 1972. And lots of court cases over this. And again, they're good here. They have lots of studies they quote here. So that's what that was. Then this sexual identity, supporting these students, inclusion, harassment is a problem. And again, please read all this because there's questions on the test. Engagement and success applies to all students, and that's what we call on you to do. That no matter what this is, and now we want to make a big deal of this, but they're still your students. They still deserve your love and support and the best education possible. And this is my assertion, as this is none of your business and not part of your job. Your job is this: teaching all the kids the best you can. Okay. And then exceptionalities, you've had some, hopefully some training on this. Here's the different disabilities and how many there are. Obviously, the biggest group is specific learning disabilities. These are what we call low incidence down here. The ones moving the fastest are autism and other health impaired, because this is where often the label the kids with ADHD and hyperactivity have. And so we have that group and this inclusion. So you deal with that. You have too low of expectations, often face discrimination, and sometimes because it's related to this. Fully integrates all students, requires collaboration. Teachers must individualize the lessons on students' IEPs. And then I give you this, and this is, I'm going to go back here and see, this is number 10, where you talk about what is that. May require accommodations. Low income disproportionately placed. And let me talk about disproportionate is this. Let's see where they talk about it. Disproportionate is the assertion is that the number of each group should be proportionate to the numbers in school. So like this, here's what disproportionate is. Well, here would be proportionate. Let's say that 50%, let's say 30% of the kids in your school are white. The assertion of proportionality would say then 30% of your kids is all that should be in special ed. If it's 40% of the whites and you only have 30% of the white kids in the school and 40% of the white kids, 40% of your special ed kids are white, then it's disproportionate. Okay. And so that's what this is about. And so let me just give you what their assertion is. Provided free and appropriate public education, African American students, English language learners, and students from low-income families. Okay, here's the list of this statement. African American students, English students from low-income families are more likely than their peers to be in special ed classes. Students labeled intellectually disabled or emotionally disabled are disproportionately from low-income and African American families, while white children are disproportionately overrepresented in categories of autism and other health impaired. In other words, white children are disproportionately having ADHD and autism. Okay, and they have a study here from 2014 and 13 supporting that. This pattern also found the placement of males of students of color in SPED and gifted classes. African Americans and Indian students, like males in general, overrepresented in disability categories. So males in general, and you know that from your SPED class, are overrepresented in special ed. At the same time, Hispanic, African American, and American Indians are underrepresented in gifted and talented programs. You will need to monitor the reason for your referrals, and I'm not quite sure. What I would want then is what would be our solution if we identify kids that have learning delays or learning or dropping back. What should we do? They're questioning you as the teacher. And my thing about proportionality, does it apply to everything then? Like if 30% of our kids are white, should not 30% of each sports team be white? Which doesn't always happen. There's some assertions here that to me are just don't fly. Disproportionate placements of students in special ed and gifted programs here may be due to a number of factors. Tests used for placement may be biased. Excellent assertion. Against low-income students, English language, and students who have not assimilated into the common culture. Some educators who recommend students to special programs are intolerant. Some educators who recommend students to special programs are intolerant. No citation here. Purely a biased attitude. Who recommend students to programs are intolerant of cultural differences and do not, very interesting assertion here, want students in their classes who they believe will disrupt classroom. Okay, can I read that to you again? Some educators who recommend students for special programs are intolerant of cultural differences and do not want students in their class who they believe will disrupt the classroom. So again, they're saying if you would not like to have somebody that disrupts your class, that's a bad thing. But there's no citation here. Schools should monitor recommendations and placement to find out if students from some groups are being disproportionately placed in these SPED programs. Now again, I say to you, by far the biggest number of cultural kids in special ed are still white. Their assertion is it's disproportionate. Okay, so do with that what you will. And then this is a part on response to intervention, popular approach. I can't remember if there's a question on the test about that, but if you have not heard of this, please read this because they do a fairly decent job of explaining what it is. Okay, can learn, they may require accommodations, disproportionately placed. All right. And then religion, and this is a little tricky here on some of their assertions here. By age 5, children are generally able to identify the family's religious affiliation, although 56% of the population reports that religion is an important part of their life. Less than 40% of religious services on a weekly basis. And again, they have some documentation there to that. So they're saying 56% identify themselves as religious, only 40% obtain services. I'm not sure what that has to do. This is an interesting picture here, and it goes into this religious identity. You just have to read this. I'm going to clip this and have you bring this in. Okay, it goes into your notes. Let's put it here. Let me let's put it right here, number 11. Okay, so see if you can do this here. 23 say what? Don't know. Okay. This group says we're not Christian. I know that. This is representing this country, or Catholic, other Christian, 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 and 1% says I don't know. Okay. So obviously religion influences values and schooling experience, essential to many people in determining cultural identity. Schools, First Amendment prohibits the establishment of religion and prohibits the free exercise of religion. Why I did that is when this first came out, this slide, it omitted that word. It omitted that word. The textbook has it right here. But when they made this slide, this word was omitted. So read this sentence without that word. First Amendment prohibits establishing religion and prohibits free exercise of religion. Now, I'm going to guess that that was an honest mistake, but think how that changes that sentence. So the First Amendment says schools can't establish religion, but they can't prohibit the free exercise of religion. Okay. Religious literacy may contribute to intolerance and crimes. And again, here's may. And they make that assertion here under religions in schools. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put this word in there. You get that one. Secular, and this is number 11. There, secular. And that comes from right here. First Amendment indicates Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment or prohibiting. And then I just want to read this to you because this may bite you sometime. Many court cases during the past century have helped to sort out the application of this section of the amendments of school. Families are generally satisfied with schools. Okay, listen again. Families are generally satisfied with schools when the schools reflect the values that are important in their religion. But, here's the but right here. They may attack. Do you see any documentation here for this assertion? May attack schools when the curriculum assigned readings, holidays, school convocations, and graduation exercises are perceived to be in conflict with their religious values. Okay, so here's what they're saying. If there's something in your school that is in conflict with your religious values, you may attack. Very interesting assertion here. Very crazy. Goes on here. Court cases have addressed the teaching of, these are all religious things, evolution, religious clubs in school, the Pledge of Allegiance. Did you know that that was controversial in our classrooms? Very controversial. Citing the Bible, religious holidays, school prayer, and teaching about religion. So courts have had to get involved in all of those. So other cases address teachers' religious liberty and rights. And when teachers have been released from their jobs because they have been promoting their own religious ideas in the classroom. Okay, do you know that's a fireable offense? Because students think that a teacher is denigrating their religion while teaching. Okay, can I keep reading this? There are many misrepresentations about how religion can be addressed in public schools. Educators cannot say prayers. Okay, what happened to this up here? Right here, they can't prohibit you do the free exercise. Here it says you can't say prayers or require students to pray in public schools. How do these fit together? However, students can pray in school as long as it's not disruptive. Did you know that? And then that term, what's disruptive, is interpreted by somebody 5 layers up from you, and it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. Teachers can teach about religion, did you know that? But they cannot privilege your religion or promote their religious faith, nor denigrate the beliefs of other groups. The Equal Access Act of '84 allows students to establish religious clubs in schools if other clubs exist. Now, this is the last thing I'm going to read to you, but it's pretty weighty here. So just the Pew Forum of Religion and Public Life reports that we have little knowledge about religion other than our own. Okay, well, isn't that profound? No. Religious illiteracy may contribute, okay, again, this is a horrible assertion, to growing intolerance among groups. Nearly 19% of reported hate crimes are motivated by religion, when the largest number against Jews, followed by hate crimes against Muslims. Okay, very interesting. And they do cite that. Not this contributing, but this. Other individuals have been targeted because of their religious beliefs, as occurred in 12 massacre of this place in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. The teaching of religions may be helpful in improving the tolerance of neighbors from religious and faith traditions. Okay, so there you go. And this part here, I don't know how to address. This is the part that I can't talk about. And so this is you, and this is number 12, and you get all of these, and a little definition of each one. And you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And many of those, several of those are on the test. So you're going to want to have an understanding for each of those. And enjoy multicultural education. Okay? There, they're all here. And get this is all for you too, teaching social justice.